Welcome, New South Wales.
Welcome to Queensland.
Welcome, Tasmania.
Welcome, ACT.
Welcome, Northern Territory.
Welcome to Western Australia.
Welcome to South Australia.
Welcome, Victoria.
The Australian Association of Holocaust Museums welcomes you to International Holocaust Remembrance Day and the annual commemoration of the Liberation of Auschwitz. This national event brings together communities from across our country. In 2005, the United Nations established International Holocaust Remembrance Day to commemorate the tragedy of the Holocaust. Tonight, we proudly honor the memory of those who were murdered and those who survived. May the everlasting light of remembrance shine forever bright to inspire future generations.
I wish to acknowledge and pay my respect to our ancestors, elders, knowledge holders, and fearless leaders, past, present, and emerging. I extend that respect to all Aboriginal people who have unbroken connection to the lands and waters wherever they may be, and give thanks for their continued strength and leadership in upholding our law and culture. In each of our communities, we honour those of the past with undeniable pride in our ancestry. We walk together to make a difference, particularly for our children. For the children of today are the leaders of tomorrow.
Today, I teach and share happiness with everyone I meet. Happiness does not fall from the sky. It's in your hands. If you're healthy and happy, you're a millionaire.
I'm doing everything I can to make the world a better place for everyone. And I implore you all to do your best too.
Let us ensure that this terrible tragedy, the worst in history, may never happen again, and also will never, ever be forgotten.
I did not have a chance to say goodbye to my beloved mother, and I have missed her every day of my life. If you have the opportunity today, please tell your mom how much you love her.
I do not hate anyone. Hate is a disease. It may destroy your enemy, but ultimately it will destroy you in the process.
I see good things in life. Ask a family member or friend over for a meal. Go for a walk. Tomorrow will come, but first, enjoy today.
When I remember that I should have died a miserable death, but instead I'm alive, so I aim to help people who are down. If I can make one miserable person smile, I'm happy.
Remember these words. Please do not walk in front of me. I may not be able to follow. Please do not walk behind me. I may not be able to lead. Just walk beside me and be my friend.
I will end my talk with a wish from my heart to all your hearts. May you always have lots of love to share, lots of good health to spare, and lots of good friends that care.
My name is Andrew Temple, and tonight I stand beside my mother, Eva, who is a survivor of the Holocaust. We are lighting this candle on behalf of all the survivors in South Australia to honour all our loved ones who were murdered in the Holocaust.
May this everlasting light keep the memory alive.
This year, the theme of Holocaust Remembrance Day is Everlasting Light. The light of the millions who shone through the darkness. The women and men whose memory and their dignity and decency will never be forgotten. Over the years, many of us have had the privilege of meeting Holocaust survivors. We witnessed an uncommon strength in them. It was best described by Viktor Frankl, who wrote that they said yes to life in spite of everything. It's easy during times such as this, moments that are solemn and sacred, to think of the Holocaust as something almost ethereal, from another time, another generation and place, or to try and understand it by speaking mostly of the goodness that the survivors have passed on to us, and all of this is true. These are understandable lenses, but they're incomplete ones. To say never forget means to grapple with the past, to wrestle with it, and to grapple with the idea of evil itself. As the late Rabbi Jonathan Sacks put it, evil never dies, and like liberty, it demands constant vigilance. We are commanded to remember not for the sake of the past, but for the sake of the future, not for revenge, but for the opposite, a world free of revenge. So let me say a few words that are neither sacred nor solemn, but are in keeping with our pledge to never forget. Words that I believe recognise the world we have rather than the world we might want to be. The virus of anti-Semitism still lives in our world. We know its symptoms: the deplatforming, the cancelling and silencing of the Jewish people, the boycotting of Jewish businesses and Jewish artists hidden under the guise of geopolitical lobbying, the threats to Jewish leaders, the attacks on Jewish places of worship, the blaming of Jewish people for every ill in the world, and the willingness of humanity to see differences in others as threats and not shared expressions of the kaleidoscope of our humanity. On days like this, it is tempting to relate to the victims of the Holocaust as people just like us: fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, sisters, brothers and friends, to try and understand the Holocaust through that familiar lens. And I understand that. But the lesson of the Holocaust is to stand with the people who we don't readily feel familiar with, and to stand with them not because we understand them, but because we understand that human dignity and light of the divine that is within us all. So on this day of memorial, we seek again to grapple with evil and with what Frankl called the knowledge of what man is capable of. And we pledge to remember, to speak up and to seek out the human dignity in all our world. God bless.
My name is Naomi. I stand beside Peter, who is a survivor of the Holocaust. We are lighting this candle on behalf of all the survivors in the ACT to honour all our loved ones who were murdered in the Holocaust.
May the everlasting light keep their memory alive.
My name is Nina Bassett, and I'm from Melbourne, one of many Holocaust survivors who made Australia their home. My generation and many organisations have been involved in commemoration and education about the Holocaust for many decades. But we're still not sure how much do Australians know about the Holocaust and what is their attitude towards the Holocaust and the human rights lessons it holds for the world today. Gandel Foundation commissioned Deakin University to undertake the Gandel Holocaust Knowledge and Awareness in Australia survey, the first ever large-scale study of Australians' knowledge of the Holocaust. The Gandel Holocaust survey aimed to understand not just how much Australians know about the Holocaust as a historical event, but also how aware they are of the horrific nature of the tragedy and its enduring impact in the present day. The following presentation outlines key findings of the Gandel Holocaust Survey and its recommendations of how we can strengthen Holocaust knowledge and awareness in Australia.
The Holocaust is part of the Australian story. Survivors are closely entwined with our country's history and have made significant contributions to Australian society. But what do Australians know about the Holocaust? How many of us understand what happened and its link to Australia? This groundbreaking, first ever survey by the Gandel Foundation and Deakin University asked over 3,500 people more than 70 questions to find out the answers. The findings give an insight into Australian people's understanding, and in some cases their lack thereof, of the Holocaust, and in particular its connection to Australia. Almost a quarter of the population aged 18 and over have little to no knowledge of the Holocaust. That number rises to 30% among the millennials. 67% correctly identified that the Holocaust refers to the genocide of Jews, while 80% knew that the Holocaust happened between 1933 to 1945. 62% of Australians knew the meaning of the final solution, and just over half correctly identified the number of Jews murdered at approximately 6 million. Far fewer understand how the Holocaust relates to Australia, with 70% saying they know nothing about Australia's connection to the Holocaust. This is despite Australia being home to arguably the largest number of Holocaust survivors per capita outside Israel and having a deeply connected history. However, the good news is that the Gandel survey revealed widespread support for maintaining and strengthening the education and the understanding of the Holocaust. Nearly 90% of Australians agree that we can learn lessons from what happened in the Holocaust. 78% think that Holocaust museums and memorials are valuable, and nearly 70% believe more needs to be done to educate the public about the Holocaust. Crucially, 2/3 of Australians support compulsory Holocaust education in schools. As importantly, the survey revealed significant benefits from Holocaust education and knowledge for Australia's social fabric. It found that on average, people with greater Holocaust awareness have warmer, more positive feelings towards minority groups, including Jews and other religious minorities like Hindus, Muslims and Buddhists, as well as vulnerable groups such as asylum seekers and also Australia's First Nations peoples. Finally, overall respondents showed very low levels of Holocaust denial and overt anti-Semitism. Australians have comparatively high levels of Holocaust knowledge, but more can be done. The Gandel Foundation and Deakin University offer recommendations related to Holocaust education in schools and better teacher training, more engagement with Holocaust museums and memorials, new resources dedicated to the Australian Holocaust connections and spreading the message of Holocaust survivor testimonies. The message to Australians is clear. Greater emphasis on Holocaust education in schools and through museums is just one step we can take, and we know it will help improve understanding and strengthen community empathy. Read the full Gandel Holocaust report with all the findings and recommendations at the Gandel Foundation and Deakin University websites.
You have now heard about the key findings of the Gandel Holocaust Knowledge and Awareness Survey. It was heartening to realise that higher Holocaust awareness is directly related to more positive feelings towards minority groups, refugees, and First Nation Australians. The message is clear. Holocaust knowledge and awareness means a more humane and compassionate society for all. So let us support our local Holocaust Museum and education centres in their mission to educate about the Holocaust. We need to work together to ensure our young people learn about the Holocaust in schools, share the messages and lessons of hope, courage and humanity, and inspire a better future for all Australians.
My name is Adina and I'm with my grandmother Nomi, a survivor of the Holocaust. We are lighting this candle on behalf of all the survivors in Western Australia to honour our loved ones who were murdered in the Holocaust.
This light is to keep their memory alive forever.
We are lighting this candle on behalf of the survivors in Queensland and to honor all our loved ones who were murdered in the Holocaust.
May this everlasting light keep their memory alive.
Today, we remember the 6 million Jewish men, women and children who perished in the Holocaust, and also the Roma and Sinti and the countless other victims of its unprecedented horror and calculated cruelty. The Holocaust defined the United Nations. Our very name was coined to describe the alliance fighting the Nazi regime and its allies. Our charter was drafted in San Francisco as the Dachau concentration camp was liberated. The United Nations must always be on the front line of the fight against anti-Semitism and all other forms of religious bigotry and racism. Today, we witness an alarming resurgence of xenophobia and hate. Anti-Semitism, the oldest and most persistent form of prejudice, is rising yet again. Attempts to downplay or downright deny the Holocaust are proliferating. No society is immune to irrationality or intolerance. We must never forget that the Holocaust could have been prevented. The desperate pleas of the victims fell on deaf ears. Too few spoke out, too few listened, fewer still stood up in solidarity. Remembering the past is crucial to safeguarding the future. Silence in the face of hatred is complicity. Today, let us commit to never be indifferent to the suffering of others and never forget what happened or let it be forgotten by others. Let us pledge to always be vigilant and uphold human rights and dignity for all. Thank you.
As the grandson of Holocaust survivors, it was extremely special to be selected as the 2020-21 Composer in Residence for the Sydney Children's Choir in cultural partnership with the Sydney Jewish Museum. As part of this residency, I was commissioned to write a suite of pieces that focused mainly on the subject of the Holocaust. This was an incredible opportunity to educate children that otherwise would not be exposed to our history through the power of music. I decided to explore the themes of resilience, coexistence, peace, remembrance, and community. But what to write? In 2015, my father received a phone call from the Sydney Jewish Museum. The museum had been donated an item. This item was my late paternal grandmother Nellie's autograph book, which she took with her as a young girl when her family fled Berlin to New York and ultimately to Sydney in 1938. It contains pages filled with poems, drawings, and letters from family and friends. Tragically, most of these inscriptions are from victims of the Shoah. The piece you are about to listen to, Deine Mummy, Your Mummy, sets a poem inscribed in this autograph book to song. It was written by my great-grandmother Cecile Merrill on Nellie's 7th birthday, 5 September 1936. It beautifully expresses a mother's love for her young daughter as she dreams of a better life beyond pre-war Germany at the time. It has been the experience of a lifetime to write music with such personal material. This was the first time I had seen my great-grandmother's handwriting, and it was a way of reconnecting with both her and my late grandmother and the history of our family. I feel extremely humbled to have the opportunity to carry the everlasting light of remembrance through the power of music, and I hope this piece will move you.
My name is Marley, and tonight I stand beside Gershon, who is a survivor of the Holocaust. We are lighting this candle on behalf of all the survivors in Tasmania to honour all our loved ones who were murdered in the Holocaust.
May this everlasting light keep their memory alive.
I'm honoured and proud to be able to introduce you to my nan, Yvonne Engelman, who is a survivor of the Holocaust. Yvonne was born in a small village in Czechoslovakia in 1927. I've been privileged to have grown up very close with both her and my late grandfather, John, who was also a Holocaust survivor. Yvonne is a resilient, stubborn, and determined soul, all qualities that helped to ensure she survived the atrocities that she experienced at the age of 15, leaving her the sole survivor of her family. Our family has always been very involved in Holocaust remembrance. My grandfather was the president of the Australian Association of Holocaust Survivors for 2 terms, and Yvonne has volunteered at the Sydney Jewish Museum since the inception and has been sharing her story with students and adults for almost 30 years. Yvonne was awarded an OAM in 2018 for her service to the Jewish community through her intimate and dedicated involvement with the museum. Her story of survival will live on in us as an important part of our family history. We, her descendants, promise to pass on her memories for generations to come. It is up to us to ensure that history is kept alive for those who suffered, for those who perished, for those who survived. The eternal light will never be extinguished.
My name is Yvonne Engelman. I was born in Dovhe, Czechoslovakia in 1927. I am the only survivor of my family. Today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, the day the world remembers the victims, the survivors, and the atrocities that occurred during the Holocaust. I am one of the lucky ones that I stand here today with a purpose and determination to continue the important message of those that do no longer have a voice. To remind the world what happened and what shall never be repeated again. This year, the theme is the everlasting flame. One day, life has changed. We were selected and taken to the railway station. We were locked in cattle wagons with many people, and the fear and anxiety I felt is hard to describe. It was dark, claustrophobic, and smelled like a dirty toilet. We were transported in cattle wagons, and we didn't know where we are going. One of the most vivid memories I have from that day was when my father asked me to promise him that I will survive. He said, I don't know where we are going, but I'm sure it's not for a holiday. I want you to promise me that you will survive. I really didn't understand what that meant at the time, but I answered, of course I will survive. Little did I know how profound and important that promise was in helping me to survive. After 5 days, we arrived to our destination, which was Auschwitz. The train stopped wagons were opened and we were ordered out. There were dozens of SS soldiers waiting on the platform. We had to line up in rows. One particular SS, the famous Mengele, had a baton in his head. When he came to our row, I was standing with my mom, dad, and grandmother. I was holding my mom's hand. Mengele roughly threw the hands apart. They went to the left and I went to the right. That was the last time I saw my parents and my grandmother. I had lost my entire family in one moment in time. The others I was standing with were taken into a large hall full of soldiers, and we had to strip and we had our hair shaved. We stood there naked, humiliated. We were ushered into the gas chambers, but for some reason, no gas came out that day. It was a miracle. There was no gas. We stayed there through the night, and then they let us out in the morning. We had to walk naked to the washrooms. We were given a grey dress, no underwear, and a pair of wooden clocks. And we didn't even have a sip of water that day. By the time we were taken to the barracks, it was night. The barracks consisted of 3-tier wooden bunks, no mattresses, only wooden slats, 5 girls to a bunk and 1 grey blanket. Each morning, we had to stand outside for roll call, which was called zeelappel. If you even moved a muscle, you were hit with a bat. We were all given jobs to do. I was taken to the hall where everybody arrived to Auschwitz. I had to sort through everyone's belongings. The most prized possessions were handed over. We could hear choking, coughing of people being gassed. We could smell the human flesh burned. The cruelty and the hunger I've experienced in Auschwitz is indescribable. I had a mission. They could never take away my spirit and my faith and the promise that I have made my dad that fateful day in the cattle wagons. That's what helped me to get through the horrors of Auschwitz. As the Allies were coming closer, we were sent on death marches in the middle of winter. We had to walk many, many kilometers every day, and many people perished along the way. I was liberated by the Russian army on the 8th of May, 1945. I left Prague, my country, my homeland, on the 22nd of April, 1948. I was put in an orphanage in Paris while I waited for a ship to depart. We sailed from Marseille to Fremantle, and then Sydney over 12 weeks, and arrived on the 5th of November, 1948. Journey was difficult, the sea was terribly rough, and the boat was old. I came to Australia penniless, not speaking the language. I met my husband, who was also a survivor. We married on the 17th of May, 1949, the first marriage of survivors in Sydney. Life was hard. We had to learn the language. We had to go to work, and we had to learn a whole new culture, which was very different to my home country. But Australia gave me an opportunity for a new life. We were blessed with 3 children, 9 grandchildren, and 16 great-grandchildren. I've been back to Auschwitz twice with my family. The first one with my husband and children, 3 of my grandchildren. My husband was able to say Kaddish, a Jewish memorial prayer, surrounded by our family. I was able to say, "You didn't succeed your mission." We are living proof. We are the victors. I was invited to attend the commemoration of the 75th anniversary Liberation of Auschwitz 2 years ago, accompanied by my 3 children, their spouses, and grandchildren. As a survivor, I speak for the 6 million Jews that were murdered. I stand here today to perpetuate the memory of those that perished and that no longer have a voice. I've been at the Sydney Jewish Museum for 29 years, educating young people, even those younger than I was in the Holocaust. One day it will be my family's turn to perpetuate the memory, to carry forward eternal life, ensure it burns brightly always. But for now, I'm committed to continue to share my story and the horrors that I experienced during the Holocaust. For those who were murdered, including my own family, may we never forget them.
My name is Robert Schwartzberg, and tonight, with my daughter Tanya and nephew Dean, we stand beside my father Joe, who is a survivor of the Holocaust.
We are lighting this candle on behalf of all the survivors in Victoria to honour all our loved ones who were murdered in the Holocaust.
May this everlasting light keep their memories alive.
I am here today on behalf of the Australian delegation to the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, known as the IHRA. Globally, anti-Semitism is on the rise, and as Yehuda Bauer, IHRA's honorary chairman, explains, anti-Semitism is not a Jewish problem. Anti-Semitism and all forms of racism are threats to our open and democratic societies. In 2015, Australia joined the IHRA as an observer nation, and in 2019 became the 33rd member country and the first member state from the Asia-Pacific region. We were warmly welcomed for our unique perspective on Holocaust education, research and remembrance. At the recent Malmö Forum in Sweden, Prime Minister Scott Morrison made several important pledges to support efforts to preserve and pass on the memory of the Holocaust, to tackle online anti-Semitism, and to create Holocaust museums and education centres across all our states and territories. Australia's official ratification of the working definition of anti-Semitism, as set out by the IHRA, sends a clear message to Australians that our democratic institutions are doing what they can to call out and combat this scourge in all its forms. It also sends a clear signal that anti-Semitic comments and acts are unacceptable, and it outlines where discourse surrounding Israel can cross the line into anti-Semitism. The key is education, and the IHRA definition provides the central plank to this endeavour and will assist organisations, institutions and workplaces to assess allegations of racism, discrimination and hate speech. We will work with the Australian Government to implement the IHRA definition. This can only enhance the tolerance and diversity that characterises Australia's multicultural society. International Holocaust Remembrance Day is an opportune time to reassess our commitment to human rights and to go beyond remembrance and learn from one of the darkest chapters in human history.
My name is Edward Santow. I'm a professor at the University of Technology, Sydney. For the last 5 years, I was Australia's Human Rights Commissioner. The Holocaust casts a very long shadow over humanity. We can remember and we can reflect on the Shoah, and we can memorialise the people who were persecuted and murdered. We can even take steps to give these people back their individual identities, making them more than mere numbers. But can we do even more than this? When we look at contemporary human rights abuses in the shadow of the Holocaust, we need to be extremely careful. The Holocaust is unique in scope, in scale, and in effect. To pretend otherwise, to suggest equivalence between human rights abuses that are not the same, is wrong-headed, and frankly, it's offensive to the survivors and to the memories of those who perished. And yet, we can't confine this history to a glass case and never look at it again. The rise of the modern human rights movement was, at least in large part, a response to the Holocaust. And so those of us who work on contemporary human rights issues must look at it head on. And so in this context, I'm very pleased to introduce two wonderful experts, Deng Adut and Daniela Gavshon. First, Deng is a defence lawyer and refugee advocate based in Western Sydney. He has spoken powerfully of his own personal experience as a child survivor in South Sudan and is now a leader in our community. Welcome, Deng. And Daniela Gavshon is a human rights lawyer, and she leads the Truth and Accountability program at the Public Interest Advocacy Centre. Daniela works with victims and survivors of war crimes to pursue truth and accountability. Welcome, Daniela. So, any community in trying to understand a very difficult part of its history, a very important technique we use is to tell and retell the stories. That is precisely what the Jewish community have been doing now over generations since the Shoah. Can you tell us about whether that's something that your community, Deng, does?
I don't think so. I think the Jewish community are not selfish. And that is one of the most important things that you have in your community. Your ancestors, your grandparents, whoever they were, they have actually left the story behind for you at the price. The price is actually, the cost. It's actually their life, because living with the trauma, retelling the story, it's actually personal injuries that they suffer. And the benefit is actually you and the rest. These are you. So I would look at it that way, that your community have not actually done a marvelous job. Our community is different because reading and writing, we wasn't there. Leaving information down is actually hard. Even cultural issues. My community don't have that foundation. And that is how the story could be lost and how actually the society can be self-destruct in the future because there's no record left behind to warn them. So this is very important. The memories are important. I love a book there. Maybe it will assist them. Maybe it will assist my daughter. Maybe I've done it at my cost. And that cost of living through trauma, because trauma lives with you.
Yeah, and
that's how I look at it.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well because I think what happens is, certainly with the people that I work with, is when you come in as a lawyer and you're sort of trying to work with people telling their story for a process, so for a prosecution or for an investigation, and there's almost this expectation, I think, sometimes that you can tell your story, you can spend hours giving your testimony, and that will lead to a result. And it's a process, right? Even if there is a prosecution, or even if there is one investigation, or even if there is one sort of truth-telling project of sorts, it's not just about telling the story once off, because I think that can be quite dissatisfying, and as you say, incredibly traumatic if you expect there to be, I guess, sort of an immediate result. And that's the thing that I found really interesting, having sort of gone to Jewish schools my whole life and grown up in an environment that teaches about Holocaust, is that it's continual. It started with with Nuremberg trials, and it's not, that wasn't it didn't draw a line in the sand. It's commemoration, like we're talking about here today. It's that constant reminder for the community about what people experienced and what and that I think helps with the support as well.
And of course, and for example, we don't have experts in my community. We don't have such experience of dealing with it. So it become almost like a shackle to your legs. You can try to juggle or wiggle it away, but nobody will wiggle away trauma. So people who have kept these memories and be able to open the doors has actually given us these days of remembering Holocaust. So it's important to tell your story if you decide not to be selfish, and I continue to always say it's important to tell the story.
Deng, you talked about not being shackled to your trauma, but not leaving it behind either. How do you strike that balance?
You just have to adjust those shackles, I think, because there's no way you can make it perfect. And try to forget, not like forgetting what happened to me. Try to forget the pain. Because what's driving me? So I just want to let go of pain, because it's the only way you can deal with it.
As a lawyer, when we're collecting stories as evidence, obviously you want to be able to get as many stories as you can that are going to lead you to having useful evidence, but at the same time you have to accept that there will be some people who are not in a position to share their experience, and that there are others that are, but together, by piecing it all together, we can develop an understanding and we can move forward with accountability processes and truth processes.
And the idea of accountability, that's where everything gets harder for us, because it seemed like our life become almost like disposable. This context, not acknowledging the victim themselves. For example, as a defense lawyer, I think telling a story is more wonderful. And I'm not afraid. I haven't been afraid ever since to tell the story. I'm not afraid of anyone, but to be honest.
It's still very brave, and I think that's a very profound observation to end this discussion on. We started acknowledging the uniqueness of the Holocaust, but also the importance to not look away, to look at the enormity of the injustice, the persecution and the murder, and to try and take something from that that helps us understand human rights. I think what you've done, Deng, throughout decades now, is being willing to tell your story so that other people can understand in a really non-abstract way what it means to have your human rights violated. That is precisely what our own Jewish community does so, I think, bravely when survivors are willing to tell their own testimony. And so it's been such an important conversation to have borne witness to for me. And thank you, Deng Adut and Daniela Gavshon, for joining me in this conversation.
My name is Julie Drexler, and tonight my sister Michelle and I stand beside our father, Paul Drexler, who is a survivor of the Holocaust.
We are lighting this candle on behalf of all the survivors in New South Wales to honour all our loved ones who were murdered in the Holocaust.
May this everlasting light keep their memory alive. שאנחנו בניהם ובנותיהם, אחים ויחוסיהם, נוברים צדוקו ביד הסקורס נשמו אסיים. וגני
May the everlasting light shine forever bright.